with me this morning to review the papers are anthropologist Marianne Hotter and broadcaster and writer Edward Adu. And here they are on your screens now. Grateful for your company to both of you guys.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us this morning.
No worries.
Marianne, let me just launch straight into one of the most colourful front pages that we have today, the Daily Star there. The headline, as we can see, Absolute Burke must walk the plank, says Absolute Burke, who refuses to walk the plank. So certainly not mincing their words, are they?
No, I mean, I had to pick this to cover because it's a fantastic front page. Most of us know about what's happened earlier in the week with P&O. They summarily sacked 786 crew members with security guards effectively walking them off the ships that they live on for a week at a time sometimes, with their personal effects in plastic bags. And the P&O chief executive, a guy called Peter Hebblethwaite, gave evidence to MPs earlier this week and was basically utterly unapologetic, said, yeah, we broke the law. We should have consulted with unions along this firing and rehiring practice, where basically people will get sacked summarily, they'll get paid off, and then rehired on a contract with much less favourable terms or through an agency. So basically, this guy Peter Hebblethwaite, the CEO, has said it's the only way to save the company. We broke the law, but basically breaking the law, rehiring all these staff at much lower costs, and paying any fines because we broke the law will still be cheaper than engaging with the unions and actually trying to negotiate a new settlement with staff that they would accept. And so Grant Shapps, the Transport Minister, has said, that's unacceptable, you need to step down. But of course, and now the PM has joined in the calls that are saying that, Peter Hebblethwaite, it's an untenable position. And the Star kind of nicely makes it, they've donned Boris Johnson up looking like a clown, basically saying, you broke the law too, didn't you? And you haven't stepped down despite many calls, because you also thought it was worth breaking the law because you could get away with it and get along with what you wanted. So,
absolutely.
Capital.
Yeah, I was thinking just that, pot kettle black, it's certainly, they're not holding back. And it was astonishing, Marianne, to watch Pete Hebblethwaite in front of MPs, and the line that he said, which sticks out, is the fact that he said, yes, I'll do it again. And you just kind of think, absolutely astonishing. And so those 800 people who will have husbands and wives and families, children, depending on them, of course, they are now in limbo. But as you said, this is something the government is looking at. Grant Shapps, when I spoke to him yesterday, says he will be coming in front of the Commons next week to bring about a law that will close the loophole that P&O exploited. I'll just come on to you, Edward, looking at the front page of the FT there, and just one of the stories that's tucked away, actually. It's the story about a billionaire who is under sanctions, struggling to pay the bills. So obviously, tell us more about this guy.
Sure. So an oligarch who's struggling because of the sanctions that have been placed, a former academic, politician and businessman who's worth nearly £5 billion. And he said because of the sanctions that have been placed, he's unable to pay his bills. And I think the realization of what is going on is the oligarchs like him, people who have lavish lifestyles, who own hotels, fancy mansions and places in London. I mean, if you mention to people and you say, an oligarch, they say an oligarch has more value or more collateral in London than anyone else. But in a sense, it's for someone to say, look, because of what's going on, literally crippled, can't pay anything, can't do this. And it makes you think, this situation is as tragic as it is. These oligarchs certainly have the power in terms of wealth, and it makes you think whether they could use their power and authority to kind of lobby to the Kremlin and to Putin and to Russia and say, well, look, you put us in dire straits. We don't want to be in this predicament. You can change the narrative by stopping what you're doing in Ukraine. I mean, you'd think that would be the most logical solution here, but clearly this guy, Petr Avon, his bank account, his assets, everything has been frozen at the moment. So he's going through a precarious time at the moment.
And as you said there, and you know, the fact that whether or not his money, of course, and the power can then translate into influence over Putin, and these are exactly what the sanctions are, of course, part of what they're designed to achieve. Let me come to you, Marianne. We're looking at the Guardian newspaper here, and anybody who drives, who's been to the petrol pumps recently, can absolutely see it. I know certainly I'm starting, you know, I'm feeling it, and I'm seeing the massive increase in costs. So less than half of fuel duty cut passed on to drivers, and this is from the AA.
Yeah, so Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, slashed fuel duty by 5 pence in the spring statement on Wednesday. But the AA and the RAC have come out saying basically it's a drop in the ocean, and only half of that cut in duty has actually been reflected in the price at the pumps. Wholesale petrol peaked at the start of March, and since then the prices have actually, for the fuel suppliers, the fuel companies, the prices have been coming down, and so fuel prices, according to the AA and the RAC, should be about 6 pence less than they are now, and that really adds up. And then Rishi Sunak is added dropped 5p. But that would just take the fuel prices back to where they were about a week ago. And these fuel suppliers just aren't passing on the cost savings for themselves to us users at the pump. So basically, it's not enough. You know, it's this argument that kind of the market will regulate itself. But when you're looking at something like filling up your car, your vehicle, then there's a limit to how much people can't do that. Yes, you might have to choose to not take some of those optional journeys, but if you're traveling for work, then are you really making a choice?
Absolutely. And Edward, I'm coming to you for a story that I think actually we need a longer time, basically, to actually go through. So if we're not able to finish on this, we'll have to touch through this. But this is the paper that says, you know, councils charging to host a Syrian refugee, but not a Ukrainian one. And you think, you know, when people are fleeing from a war zone and they're refugees, they are simply humans. Can we please just treat them equal on that stage?
And clearly not with this. It seems it's a tick box exercise where refugees from Ukraine, they're exempt, but refugees from elsewhere are not. This is a woman who wanted to do something that we would all do, which is to help a refugee, help someone in need. And she was told by our local council, which in fact is Boris Johnson's local council, Hillingdon Council, that she would have her £500 discount removed if she housed the refugee at her house. And it's just astonishing to think
it is
where
Edward,
councils would actually go to those lengths to make that decision.
Absolutely. Edward, thank you very much indeed for your time. We'll be back with you in just a few minutes' time.